Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I welcome everybody on behalf of ROGS, Society ROGS Ratlam, for this meeting on genital tuberculosis and its management. I call upon Dr. Manisha Maheshwari ma'am, our president, to welcome Dr. Jayashree Sridhar.
Thank you, Dr. Aditi. Is Dr. Jayashree there?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Aditi. Good evening to all. I invite and welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Jayashree Sridhar from Indore. I also extend warm welcome to all the seniors, colleagues of Ratlam Society and other societies who have participated in this meeting. I would like to give a brief introduction of Dr. Jayashree. She is well-known, senior, knowledgeable, hard-working obstetrician in Indore, as President Secretary of Indore OBGYN Society. She has done her graduation from KMC Chennai and MS from MGM Indore. Also done DNB. She took advanced reproductive endocrinology training at Hamburg, Germany. She has
Manisha ma'am, we cannot hear you. ठीक है. Aditi ma'am, I think there's some problem with Manisha ma'am's network. Yeah. You please take over, Aditi ma'am.
So we all welcome Dr. Jayashree Sridhar ma'am. As ma'am said, she has done her graduation from KMC Chennai 91. She has done a PG from Indore Medical College in the year 96. Madam is dealing with advanced reproductive endocrinology, and she has taken a training from Hamburg, Germany. And she is especially interested in practicing evidence-based medicine. So, without wasting any much time, I would welcome Dr. Jayashree ma'am to please deliver her talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you, Manisha. Manisha and I date back to 93. You know, we were co-residents and we've had a swell of time. We're very good friends. Hello, Neha. And please, will you allow me to share screen, the host? I'm not able to share. Yeah. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, today I'm going to be talking to you about diagnosing and treatment. Treatment of tuberculosis, of course, is easy, you know. What is difficult is diagnosis. So I have always thought that, diagnosing tuberculosis of the genital tract is the Sherlock's Holmes moment for the gynec. You know, like if you take obstetrics, whether it's placenta previa or abruption or PIH, the diagnosis stares on your face. You know, it is not a very big thing for a diagnostician to, as an obstetrician, you know, like you don't feel that you've done a very cerebral thing by diagnosing PIH or diabetes. Yes, and management is tricky, but diagnosis is not so difficult. Do you people agree? Because we're a small audience, let us be interactive, you know. So do all of you agree, Neha? So is the diagnosis of tuberculosis which is difficult?
Yes,
Don't
ma'am.
you agree? Yeah.
I haven't diagnosed a single case yet.
Yeah. So Aditi, so I have named this Sherlock's Holmes moment for the gynec. You know, when you diagnose tuberculosis, half the battle is won. So my name is Sherlock Holmes. Not I mean all us obstetrics. You know, let us feel that we are Sherlock Holmes. It's my business to know what other people don't. So, what is the diagnostic dilemma in genital tuberculosis? It's all hope for the infertile patients, a little bit of hype, and a little bit of harm if you misdiagnose it. Like, sometimes we tend to overdiagnose, especially patients who come from the north, like, from Delhi, Punjab, Haryana. It's not to blame, but I think tuberculosis is very common there. So every second patient has had a anti-tubercular, not even every second, most of the patients have had anti-tubercular. So it might do harm, isn't it? And it's also harm if we do not diagnose it on time. So what does this talk about? One, I'm going to tell you about the criteria from my clinical experience plus evidence-based medicine. Why I've written I normally do not agree to practicing only based on clinical experience. But as far as tuberculosis is concerned, because it does not affect much of the Western world, I personally feel that, most of it is like, it's on clinical experience. My senior, so many times I have seen, but senior gynecologists of the city ring me up and telling me, Jayashree, is this tuberculosis? That we have seen patients with this chronic white discharge presenting like this, and lo behold, it turns out to be tuberculosis. So a clinical experience is very important in tuberculosis because not much of data is available. Plus, of course, evidence-based medicine. Second, clinical scenario in our day-to-day practice. What does the patient present with? How do you think tuberculosis? Then what happened to the said genital tuberculosis patients? I've just had my series and I'm going to be presenting. And then genital tuberculosis in pregnancy, Manisha said, please touch up on that so that, for completion of the topic. So what are the challenges in managing genital tuberculosis? First is a diagnostic dilemma. That's why we are Sherlock Holmes, isn't it? We'll have to behave like Sherlock Holmes. What do you do when conventional tests are negative? It has happened to each and every one of us. We do a laparoscopy, we see a dumbbell shape, we see fimbrial phimosis, we see tubercles, but the conventional tests are negative, like, Mantoux, or, you don't see any tubercle bacilli. So how do you diagnose latent tuberculosis? Is there a role of USG? Yes, there is a big role of USG. What is the treatment dilemma? If only TB PCR is positive, do you treat? Do you do harm by treating a patient? And then what about the test after anti-tubercular? Many patients have already taken anti-tubercular and they want to know if they are negative now. Whether they are suffering from multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, or are they cured? So how do you want to? So these are the questions I'm going to attempt to answer. So, it's a very big diagnostic, latent genital tuberculosis is a big diagnostic dilemma. It is a big cause of infertility, recurrent pregnancy loss, especially, a patient who's a little pregnant, her beta HCG is around 40, 45, 50, consistently, 3 or 4 times, she says, I'm a little pregnant, but no sonography, the beta HCG doesn't improve. So please think of tuberculosis in our country. Abnormal uterine bleeding. I have diagnosed 4 patients of genital tuberculosis with postmenopausal uterine bleeding. So I, for one, feel that latent genital tuberculosis outside of infertility is not reported as adequate as it should be. So now, what are the pitfalls? See, long ago, I heard that, due to constant exposure of tuberculosis in a high, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, all the African, sub-Saharan African countries are all high prevalent tuberculosis countries. US, Scandinavian countries are all low prevalence countries. So traditionally, what were we taught? We were taught that since we are a high prevalence country, latent tuberculosis should not be treated. If this patient goes to US or Singapore, many times, in fact, even my mom, when she had to take visa to go to Singapore, she showed up tuberculosis. One of these latent tests were treat latent tuberculosis. Because A, infertility, and B, the other. In fact, I read a study by Tripathi, SN Tripathi, where he had said 70% of the patients with ectopic pregnancy in his series he had a huge series. I don't remember the exact number, but it was in 4 figures for some 17, 18 years. And he said 70% of them had tuberculosis. 70% of ectopic pregnancy in his series had tuberculosis. So what are the major criteria I have taken in my patients, so that I can increase the hope, less hype and no harm. One, culture positive, no doubt, from the endometrium tubes or POD fluid. Even if one patient in one culture is positive, we treat her as tuberculosis. Transvaginal sonography, please pay extra attention to sonography, so that you can correlate oligemic myometrial cyst, endometrial scarring. There is a follicular rim of fluid. There is an internal os scarring. This is very important. Even if you're putting in a dilator, a small dilator or this uterine sound, the internal os is very, very thick and fibrous. If the external os is very tight, think of endometriosis. If the internal os is tight, please think of tuberculosis. A very, these signs I'm talking to you is about latent phase. Patients with TO abscess and, TO mass with extensive scarring, grade 4 additions with amenorrhea. I don't want to diagnose those patients. You're not going to gain anything by diagnosing these patients. I want to diagnose my patients at this stage where they are having subtle signs, internal os fibrosis, or there is this beaking at the cornu, when you're putting in the probe and rotating it to 90 degrees, you see a beaking at both the cornu, or a slight hydrosalpinx, persistent fluid in the endometrial cavity in the secretory phase. HSG, all of special mention to the internal or jagged appearance of the internal os. This, in my opinion, tubes and the internal os are affected almost, simultaneously, because many a times that's one of the earliest signs. Once the tube is blocked and there is a TO mass, there's no fun in diagnosing. Molecular, of course, the CB-NAT and the TB-PCR positive patients, any one of them. Hysteroscopy, again, as I told you, internal os, pale endometrium, pericornual scarring, tubercles, grade 1, 2, A, B additions. Severe additions of grade 4 is most likely because of some, repeated dilatation and curettage. And then the Netter syndrome. Netter syndrome, again, on hysteroscopy, where you have a, T-shape mass. Motashaw sign, we were all taught Motashaw sign when we were doing postgrad. I'm sure the youngsters like Neha, do you know what is Motashaw sign? I'm sure the youngsters won't know. You know what it is? They are being blocked. The uterus, and all the serological tests have been banned by WHO. All of you know, isn't it? Cornerstone is transvaginal sonography, number 1. You people can differ from me that HSG and laparoscopy, but for me it's transvaginal sonography. I don't know, Manisha, do you agree with me?
Jayashree, I myself do HSG, and I
Okay, you agree more on HSG. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other seniors, Manisha? In your
I don't have any experience, but yes, if it can be diagnosed on TVS, it is quite easier for us, and for the patient also the compliance will be better.
Yeah, that is a cornerstone. If I can convince even half of you that transvaginal sonography is the stepping stone to diagnose tuberculosis, I'm so excited about this topic, because I have seen that I have diagnosed so many transvaginal sonography. And then of course there is one more evidence, either on hysteroscopy or laparoscopy. On this thing, tissue diagnosis, like
बेटा पहले तो बताया करो कम से कम तुमने सुबह से तुम्हें पता है कल आना है किसी ने
many times
मैं करने वाले का प्रोग्राम उसी हिसाब से
reports, like
बताते तो सही तुम लोग बताते हो जब जानने के टाइम
many times we come with the reports and then we feel no, it is
उस दिन भी नहीं बताया
we did a parents and you said cornal beaking.
Sorry for the interruption.
Many times they come with the HSG reports like an infertile couple. No?
Yes,
Then
sir.
they are able to. Then the
Uh,
HSG is helpful too, and then you can substantiate it with transvaginal sonography.
Yes, sir. Back in 93, you know, Dalal sir used to be so excited about transvaginal sonography. Then it was not a known concept in Indore, but sir had come from Mumbai and he used to be,
Yes.
you remember, sir, 93, 94?
Yes, yes. And we presented this paper also in Hyderabad on ectopic, early think ectopic on.
Okay,
But
think
then-
ectopic, I think you called it. Yeah, I remember. So, here, what does a positive PCR mean? It does not tell us the presence of latent tuberculosis. What it tells us is just a few strands of mycobacterial DNA was present in the sample which you sent to the lab. Okay. This might be a strong statement. It's a dumb test. This I have written. PCR is only doing PCR is a dumb test. It fools the pathologist and the gynecologist. Pathologist is forced to report what they see. What did she see? She or he just saw some mycobacterial strand. So he has reported it. Gynecologist knee-jerk reaction. Positive report. Chalo treat kar lete. You know, patient has come to us. So PCR positive. Let me treat it. So, we have to think that mycobacterium means not only Mycobacterium tuberculosis or leprae. Mycobacteria are a diverse group of rod-shaped bacteria, which includes MOT or NTM. In fact, even tap water is supposed to contain mycobacteria, isn't it? So what I would like to reiterate now is there is these likely presentations of tuberculosis. Of course, subfertility, all of us know. Abnormal uterine bleeding, postmenopausal bleeding, chronic pelvic pain, RPL as in, multiple biochemical losses, or, just before this blighted ovum, 2-3 millimeter gestational sac seen. And then if there's a patient who's having unrelenting vaginal discharge, you've treated her on everything possible, and please think of tuberculosis. Yeah. So on pelvic USG, coming back to it. So what are the main, please, I request all of you to read Dr. Ashok Khurana's paper on pelvic sonography. It is excellent. So these I have pointed out because these are the things I could diagnose with my very limited knowledge of sonography. This is very easy to pick up, So I have put in these points. One, interruption. I'm going to be showing you pictures. Interruption in the endometrium, endometrial fluid, persistently thin endometrium, vertical course of interstitial extent of the tube, subendometrial calcification, oligemic myometrial cysts, and follicles with echogenic rim. Follicles with echogenic rim. Yeah, so this is it. Yeah. This is a follicle with a echogenic rim. You see the thick nature of the follicle, and then there is a small amount of fluid. Here, follicle rim of fluid. Always, if there's not, follicle is not very clear, please think of tuberculosis. This is the irregular stepladder type of an endometrium with some shiny, here, this is a better picture, I think. This is the persistent or the day 12, day 13, it is only 6 millimeter. This is a very classy oligemic myometrial cyst with TO masses. Here you see the oligemic myometrial cyst in the posterior border, and then you see the jagged endomyometrial interface. These patients, when you switch on the color, you see that color Doppler flow is very less up to junctional zone 1 or 2. The junctional zone is so ragged. So this patient, she ultimately conceived after an AKT of 6 months. Then I did her IVF and she had twins. Here you see the endometrial fluid popping in. The oligemic myometrial cyst. I'm showing the pictures again and again so that, it gets reiterated, and, whenever we see it, we know to diagnose it. This is just by the way, when back days when we were doing our post-graduation and our professors were there, like Professor Madam Bhagwat or, Neha's mother-in-law, it used to be, patient and a doctor. But now it is not so. Now patients have become care buyers. And they used to be care receivers, now they are care buyers. We used to be caregivers, doctors used to be caregivers, and now what have we become? We have become care sellers. So care seller to care buyer, so care receiver to care buyers they have become. So this is a huge change, so this whole system is a little low on trust. So we better be very careful before diagnosing something. We need to give them the resolution for disease, disease management. Just telling them, you might have tuberculosis, or this proves, this PCR is positive, you might have, that's not they are all looking for solution, these care buyers. So we'll have to face it. This is how it is. I'm giving you a few pictures of hysterosalpingography and what it appeared on hysteroscopy. See the defect over there on hysteroscopy is being seen in HSG sonography, 3-dimensional sonography, rendered very well. Here you see small polyp. Yeah, it's actually not a polyp. It was a caseating mass. Irregular cavity, the Netter's syndrome. This patient was amenorrheic. Here, adhesions, intrauterine adhesions, grade 2B adhesions. 1/3 of her uterus was full of adhesions. Here, this is chronic endometritis. After treating that patient, this was her condition. So I gave her 14 days of ofloxacin and metronidazole, and her endometrium improved. Here. These are a few other, if you can correlate very well, the 3D sonography and the hysteroscopic picture. How they have these, defects and adhesions. This change in environment, is it good? From care buyers, they're from care receivers, they have become care buyers. Is this environment good? It's not good. But let's not get excited. So what it teaches us is, let's just not get excited that, okay, I've got a hysteroscope, let me do a hysteroscopy for everything. No, first let's diagnose it on a ultrasound, render the image on 3-dimensional, and then have a, we need to have a thought at the back of the mind. Yes, this might be the diagnosis, and sit across the table and let us exchange it, because there are so many people coming up with phalloposcopy and this 3-dimensional, this that. So the next medical toy in the market, we need not rush in and buy. We must think what is useful for us and what we know. So this is what this change in environment has taught us. What one man can invent, another can discover. Whatever we have, with that we can, sort of do the best for our patients. This is, Dr. Nare, I took it from Naren Malhotra sir's slide, and I found it really very useful. He said the one-stop uterine diagnosis and treatment. First, do a transvaginal ultrasound, and then do, this Bitoki 2.9 millimeter hysteroscope without using a dilator or without using even a speculum or valsalum. Just vaginally, you distend the distend the vagina and the cervix with an atraumatic approach. You go in and you see the uterus like this, okay? And then with the fluid in situ, immediately put in the transvaginal probe. So that intracavitary fluid which you have left on hysteroscope will give you a contrast image. So this is a one-stop uterine diagnosis and treatment. You have seen the whole cavity on ultrasound and on hysteroscope in one sitting. So now this is what the patient wants. These care buyers now want quick diagnosis and treatment. Yeah, coming back to these are all Indian studies, Tripathi has got maximum number of studies, and they've all said what percentage of infertile patients are in most of the studies is between 19 to 48% of infertile patients are having tuberculosis, more in the north. This slide I added because I found it interesting. They said how patients with a chronic non-healing ulcer on the vulva turned out to be tuberculosis, how a case of postmenopausal bleeding turned out to be tuberculosis. A young patient, tubercular endometritis in a young woman, she was diagnosed as leiomyoma. And this patient had a pelvic mass and a abdominal pain, and it ultimately turned out to be a tubercular mass. So, like, think ectopic, Dalal sir had said, think tuberculosis also is important. Here, one case of cervical tuberculosis and 2 cases of endometrial TB in women of reproductive age group. Initially, they were diagnosed as cervical malignancy. Many of them, one case of ovarian mass, they thought it was an ovarian malignancy in a 29-year-old, and it turned out to be tuberculosis. So there is nothing more stimulating than a case where everything goes against you. Genital tuberculosis is one of them. So if you have anything to comment now, possible, any questions, or you want to comment anything, Neha? Good. Yeah, if I've convinced you, that's great. Yeah. So you know what? I thought, we take the help of Google for everything. Any patient comes to us, Google makes the journey from laparoscopic OT to the lab OT easy. I want to make it a shorter route. Any of you familiar with this picture? This picture of the baby surrounded by needles. These are around 1700 needles. Are any of you familiar? Please unmute yourself or raise your hand. This is a beautiful picture shot by Samantha Parker. This is an IVF baby. This mother probably conceived after 7 IVF cycles. Okay. And the husband loved her so much that his wife had received 1700 injections. He stored all those injections. And then they ultimately did a photo shoot of this baby. So they, surrounded it with all the injections. So it's actually a pathetic thing, if you ask me, that, patient had to undergo so much of trouble. Our patients should have a shorter journey. So that's why I put this picture. It had a lasting impression on my head, that's why I put it. Cornwell, do you appreciate the pallor? This is also a very typical sign. Additions and a little bit of pallor in the peri-cornual region on hysteroscopy. These are all additions. Actually, the picture is not so good, but I just want to, by the way, say small tubercles on the hysteroscopy I have seen on PCOS also. I have not read anywhere. This is just my experience I'm sharing. It could be tuberculosis, but superficial tubercles kind of, blebs you see. It could be a patient of PCOS. Though I don't know why they have those blebs on hysteroscopy, but I've seen PCOS patient having blebs on hysteroscopy like this. See the intrauterine synechiae compared to the 3D rendered image. I think it was Gokhale sir who gives the images.
Yeah.
He gives fantastic 3D images. This is ours, yeah. See, before and after. You see the cervical canal over here. I told you, the internal os is the one which is so affected so badly. You know why I'm bothered so much? Because it affects my embryo transfers. So that's when, 7-8 years back when I started this IVF, that's when I decided that the internal os is so important. The internal os, you see all fibrous, and then you see after the cervical canal is all free. After we have done the hysteroscopy, what we did was a metroplasty, the cervical region laterally, we just, put it with the scissors. These hydrosalpinges, okay, they are horrible, isn't it? Why I put these images, when you see these hydrosalpinges, just put in a laparoscope and cut off both the hydrosalpinx, because this will going to affect the IVF results also. Because not, these tubes are not going to help her at all. So this is a small, always a dilemma in your mind. Removal of hydrosalpinx before ET, is it the standard of care? Pros and cons. Sherlock says yes and Watson says no. Yeah, Sherlock says yes. Laparoscopic proximal occlusion of ultrasound. When you're doing a diagnostic laparoscopy, if you're removing the hysterosalpinx, it improves live birth rate by 3.5 to 3.8 fold. So why not remove it? Why? Because fluid impairs the implantation, embryo development activity. But what Sherlock says here, fluid-filled saculated pouches, these are the kind of endometrial. What Sherlock says, Watson says no. So Watson, why does he say no? He says, look for a non-surgical strategy to limit the endometrial inflammation, fluids fill from the hydrosalpinx. What is the disadvantage? In US, it's very costly. Here we do a laparoscope for 25,000 bucks, but there it's very costly. One of my patients translated it as into around 1.8 lakhs or something. Then they've said complication like bowel injury, 1 in 769. I think it's too much, isn't it? I think it's too high. That should. So, and moreover, once you cut off the tubes, it's forever IVF. So Watson says no. So what about our audience? Manisha, what do you say?
Jayashree, just I want to see the slide which you gave, findings in TVS. TVS में tuberculosis की findings की जो slide थी ना, can you focus it again?
Okay, that's quite a 1 minute. I don't know how to.
Back बहुत पीछे है.
That's quite बहुत ही पीछे है वो. 1 minute.
उसमें कुछ लिखा था vertical 4th या 5th point.
Interstitial. Yeah. You turn.
Yeah. What is that?
You turn your probe 90 degrees. And the interstitial end of the tube, it goes like this, and a 90-degree angle you can see between the uterus and the adnexa. Next time I see, I'll send you the picture. I don't think the picture is here, but I'll send you. I'll WhatsApp you the picture.
The beaking appearance you said.
Yeah.
Now, about
beaking is at Cornu, na?
Yeah, Cornu. Yeah.
Ma'am, about this hydrosalpinx, I just want to know, if you cut off both the tubes, aren't there medical legal issues with it?
No, we'll tell them that with the hydrosalpinx you're not going to conceive, because the birth rate is increasing by 3.5 to 3.8 times. There have been patients where I lose patients because they say, no, if you're not going to do the embryo transfer without cutting off the we do, because patients want to, they want to hold on to that last hope. Once you cut off the tubes, they have no chance of natural conception. But these things are constant source of inflammation. So once you're not cutting off the hydrosalpinx, the patient is not going to conceive on embryo transfer. So what is the purpose of such a, purpose of the whole thing, And she's not anyway conceiving. Her tubes are bad.
They cannot claim us for tubectomy, no, ma'am? We have to take consent accordingly.
Yeah. And there are many issues with it. Yeah, it's a very huge topic, I have touched on it.
Ma'am, aspirating the hydrosalpinx help.
This is a study which showed a 3.5 to 3.8 times increased live birth rate after salpingectomy in patients but not all hydrosalpinx has to be removed. I remove only those which are seen on transvaginal sonography. If a hydrosalpinx is seen on sonography, it should be removed. If it is not seen, then leave it alone. If it is just seen on MRI, or if it's just seen on HSG, then you can leave it alone. But if it is seen on ultrasound, then I think we should remove it. This is one of my favorite slides. See, a doctor should be good at basic sciences and clinical sciences. Basic sciences is the soul of the It's like the soul of the human body. Clinical sciences is our body. So for a good human being, you should have a good soul and a good body. If a doctor is good only in basic sciences, but is not good at clinical sciences or operative, he or she is like a ghost, isn't it? If the doctor is very good at clinical sciences, but is not good at basic sciences, which is the soul of the clinical medicine, then we function like robots. So whenever we do something in medicine, be it genital tuberculosis or even a normal delivery, we need to know the basic sciences behind it. We are basically scientists, go on questioning why. So we make an informed decision. When before I cut off the hydrosalpinx, I always tell them, let me do your OPU. Because when you cut off the hydrosalpinx, you also mar the blood supply of the ovary. So her ovarian reserve is going to fall. So it will be prudent for me to do the ovarian collection, OPU, and then this is called a segmental cycle. Do an OPU, freeze the embryos, and then do a hydrosalpinx clipping, and then do the embryo transfer later. Make an informed decision. As Neha said, be smart. These are small series, 125. This was 3 years back I presented, in IOGS. So out of 125 of our patients, 46 conceived, 11 after IUI, 14 after ICSI, out of which out of the 14, 11 had oocyte donation, and 5 patients of surrogacy because their endometrium was irretrievable. This is an acute angulation of this thing, I think I created a false passage here. So always primum non nocere. In tuberculosis, do no harm. When you're doing a hysteroscopy or a laparoscopy, be very careful, because we can create a false passage like that. And once you create a false passage, your tube goes only there, So sometimes when I find that the internal was very tight, I call the sonography machine in the OT. I find sonography machine more useful than laparoscopy in this case. So what are the indications for hysteroscopy in a case of genital tuberculosis? Cervical canal problems, if I have a suspicion of any intrauterine pathology, endometrial pathology, and it also serves as an endometrial scratching, and a second look hysteroscopy after antitubercular treatment. So by failing to, Abraham Lincoln had said, by failing to prepare, we prepare to fail. He said, give me 6 hours to chop a tree. I will spend 5.5 hours sharpening my axe. Just giving an AKT of 2 + 4 months will not be enough. We have to draw a full map of hers, You to take this AKT and then go to the OT, do an hysteroscopy or a laparoscopy, then you go in for IV. We have to give her the full map. That's what I mean. So this negotiation, this one paper I presented at last AICOG Lucknow. Negotiations at the OS, Master Regulator of Embryo Transfers. Do difficult embryo transfers translate to poor pregnancy? Yes. So which diseases affect the OS? Mainly tuberculosis and chronic infections. So data. I cannot make bricks without clay, Sherlock Holmes said. So these are, see where we had easy ET, our rate was pregnancy. I'm talking about clinical pregnancy rate is 44%. Where there was a difficult embryo transfer, our pregnancy rate fell to 12%. So the internal OS management is very important. Here you see the chronic endometritis. It can look all the 4, all the 4 are tuberculosis. So hysteroscopically, the chronic endometritis can look like any of these, The pale endometrium, that is a hopeless one, the B. Intracavitary adhesions. Here I've cut it and then see the cavity. So actually, patients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That what they're bothered is how you care for them, It's not our knowledge which is important to them. Short thing about genital tuberculosis and pregnancy. I was very surprised, I believe Charles Dickens, I used to hate him, what morose stories he used to write. He really spoiled my childhood. He labeled tuberculosis as the disease which medicine has never cured, which medicine can never cure. Imagine making such a statement, huh? And then what did Hippocrates say? How it changed, He said pregnancy had a beneficial effect on tuberculosis. In his view, it persisted right up to the early part of the 19th century. When we were kids, when my cousins and all used to have dysmenorrhea, our parents and all used to say, once you get married, marriage used to be a cure for dysmenorrhea. Manisha, do you remember? Yeah. So
Yes,
those
ma'am.
people probably had endometriosis. So like this, whenever patient had tuberculosis, they used to think marriage is a answer for tuberculosis. What was their that the enlarging uterus helps to collapse the open cavities and it improves the breathing. So he recommended marriage and pregnancy in unmarried women with tuberculosis. So extreme was the situation. So the pendulum now, it has swung from one extreme to the other. Now we feel that the tuberculosis should be treated before. So now let us come back to serious stuff. Enough of history. So what is the impact of pregnancy on tuberculosis? Untreated tuberculosis associated higher risk of abortion, intrauterine growth retardation, low birth weight babies, prematurity, congenital tuberculosis, and neonatal tuberculosis. So overall, the prognosis becomes bad. So always, whenever we have a patient diagnosed as tuberculosis because of cough or weight loss, ask her to continue her drugs. And of course, without streptomycin, all the other drugs can be given. So the only problem comes when the patient is coming with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. I found 2 or 3 studies. 38 patients were treated with pregnancy second line. They're giving this injectable kanamycin and then capreomycin, levofloxacin and amikacin. So these are ototoxic. We need to inform the patient. But a patient who's having multi-drug resistant tuberculosis otherwise has a high mortality and morbidity. So we take an informed consent and tell them that this is the rate of stillbirth and low birth weight and premature and ototoxic drugs, but we need to give them. Ototoxicity, ethionamide has CNS defects, fluoroquinolones has cartilage defect. But at least maybe, aminoglycosides, I won't start in the first trimester. And fluoroquinolones and ethionamide, again, at 14 weeks, we will start. But we have to see if it's a very critical case, we need to start nevertheless. But if the patient is stable, then, a few weeks, we can sort of delay this thing. In advanced disease, despite teratogenic potential, aggressive treatment must be continued. Risks should be fully discussed. Options should be given whether to continue or terminate the pregnancy. So what is the modern opinion? Aggressive treatment should be initiated, which will delay or to prevent congenital neonatal tuberculosis, adverse pregnancy outcome, and maternal progression of disease. What about breastfeeding? Breastfeeding encouraged in most cases. What are the contraindications? Mother with tuberculosis mastitis, maternal non-compliance with treatment, and MDR-TB with prolonged infectivity. Only in such cases, I will not do this thing. Yeah. I'm saving the best for the last. We did PRP in 5 cases. This is not mine, but I'm just telling you by the way. But doing PRP in patients with thin endometrium, chronically thin endometrium, I would like to share with you that PRP has got a good. It's not, at least you salvage those cases. So what do you do with all these refractory thin endometrium? Sometimes we give them dilute HCG from day 5, 125 IU improves the endometrial thickness. Or give them all this masala of sildenafil and E vitamin. L-arginine. It does improve marginally. Best is always reserved for the last. Autologous PRP promotes endometrial growth and improves pregnancy outcome during IVF. This is the thing I'm very excited about. How I'm injecting is through the 2.9 mm Bitoki from the treatment channel. Put in an injection and just intra endometrially, like between the endomyometrial junction, you insert the needle and inject it inside. And her endometrium on an average 1.5 to 2 millimeters, it does improve. So this is the latest kid on the block. But this is not to say that every endometrium is going to improve, and I don't want to do a cachectomy on all my patients. They'll be charged for so much for all these things. So I don't want to sound as though I want to do a cachectomy, but it's worth a try in these patients who otherwise are hopeless. Now they're going to stop surrogacy also. So we need to sort of continuously invent ourselves to improve the outcome in these patients. Any other questions? I see Aparna also. Hi, Aparna.
Hi, on which day you inject this PRP? In the same?
No, previous cycle. So that I'm sure that my endometrium has improved.
Which day? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Day 9, but not in the same cycle.
Ongoing cycle?
No, different cycle, previous cycle.
So previous cycle it improved the endometrium and its effect remains the same in the next cycle also?
Yeah. In fact, it improves.
So what do you think it does? Like it improves the endometrial glands or vascularity or what?
Pardon, I can't hear you.
It improves endometrial glands number or vascularity of endometrium.
Yeah, it improves the vascularity.
Okay. So can you tell me how many injections? 8 to 9?
1
like
minute.
it at each point, how much you inject at each point?
Yeah.
How much volume you inject at each point in the endometrium?
See, I take that insulin syringe, okay. That is so the whole 40 units, it's the 40 units, right? So I inject three and two, but 2 on the fundus and 3 on both sides.
Okay, and that is 0.2.
10 units, yeah, 10 units. 5 units, 5 units.
0.2 ml.
Yeah.
Okay.
Total 0.2 ml.
40 units is 1 ml.
Okay. Hi, Anuradha.
Have I been very short, or I thought I won't bore you with all the drugs and details, and I'm not very sure. I normally send the patients to the TB specialist. So I didn't want to talk on something I didn't know. So I didn't touch much on the drugs and all that, because I normally send it to government TB specialist, So
Thank you, ma'am, for an elaborate talk. And it was a very beautiful presentation. I was totally hooked on it. What I wanted to ask was how, like now that we are not allowed to empirically start the treatment, so can our sonographic diagnosis medico-legally empowers us to start the patient on the drugs?
Yeah. We need to only notify, See what in our this thing, Dr. Vijay Chajlani, he tells me, like many times the CB NAT never comes positive, in laparoscopy, hysteroscopy. So he leaves it on us. He says, okay, if you have finding these 2 are positive and you feel, that's why I shared with you that major slide, my criteria. I've got his fixed criteria and I've shared it with him also. So as soon as I tell him, sir, ye criteria fit ho raha hai, he says, you notify me and then you start, even if CB NAT is negative. And then he opens up the case. Before closing each case, they ask you. The government people are very, very, I find the DOT people extremely professional. They're very good. Before closing each and every case, they ask me, madam, have you closed the case? You're sure it's not tuberculosis? Are you proceeding further? And when I say no, only then they close the case.
Ma'am, just today itself in my OPD.
Hello, Dr. Anuradha. I see you. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Anu.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
It was a lovely presentation. It was a lovely presentation. So
Thank you. Thank you.
the dilemma still remains that we shouldn't be backing up with the molecular diagnostics. Should we go for TB-PCR, or should we just not? I mean, should we just take the patient up for even hysteroscopy, even HSG? I routinely do, and as you said, the findings were. I mean, many a times we can diagnose the patient on HSG, but even after that, if I have to prove that the patient is of a tuberculosis, so should I? I mean, which is the test that you usually recommend? Because biopsies to boss are really, none of them.
The nucleic acid amplification test, no, even in proven cases, it's not coming as positive. TB-PCR, at least, it is more sensitive. It is not very specific, but it is sensitive. So it can corroborate your diagnosis. So you can take that as one of the criteria. But you need two major criteria. Supposing you have a laparoscopy, HSG, or hysteroscopy, or the internal loss thing which you feel ki no, she is tubercular, then have a molecular thing which can corroborate. But if you have two major, Dr. Chajlani told me, if you have a laparoscopy and a hysteroscopy finding, please go ahead and start. We just have to inform them. That's all.
Before starting the therapy.
They are very, very, yeah.
And how about when they say you can do the GeneX testing from the endometrial fluid? I mean, it never comes out to be positive.
Never comes out. Even CB Natta, this nucleic acid amplification, I have done over 150 cases. In fact, Chajlani sir told me, Jayashri, तुम maximum भेज रही हो. सर आप पॉजिटिव भी तो नहीं दे रहे. बोले मैडम आएगा पॉजिटिव तो मैं दूंगा ना. बट TB-PCR उन्होंने बहुत पॉजिटिव दिया है. तो मतलब it's ultimately it's a sensitivity specificity thing. So we need to corroborate and have these major and minor criteria. Actually, I have done a paper on this. I have to go about publishing. I need a junior's help, to publish that paper, because you have to do a lot of all this literature searching and stuff like that. I've got all the material ready, for my 370, 380 patients. So I have found my own criteria and scoring and all that with a lot of, yeah. But to present it, I need more help, So with all the clinical work we are doing, we're handicapped,
We'll show you. We'll soon come up with Dr. Jayashri's
hopefully. Thank you, Anu. Thank you. How encouraging.
Okay, it was lovely. It was lovely hearing you.
I thank Manisha a lot. I just told her, Manisha, I just want to share my work, and she was very kind to allow.
Dr. Aditi?
Our pleasure, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for a nice talk. And it was wonderful hearing you and meeting everybody else after such a long time. And on behalf of Ratlam Obs and Gynecological Society, I thank you, Shridhar ma'am, and thank you all the delegates for participating. And thank you our sponsors, Pharmacynth, for always standing up with us. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. It was lovely.
Yeah. Any more questions to Jayashri?
हाँ जी.
मम्मी को याद कर रहे थे ना मम्मा.
हाँ. Good evening, madam.
Hello, madam.
Hi. कैसी है?
Asha ma'am. Good afternoon. अच्छी हूँ ma'am.
Actually, I was taking my food. इसलिए that's why I was taking lunch. So I was on the dining table, no?
Neha was representing you. She's doing a good job. Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening you, but my mobile was mute actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you agree, ma'am? You are so senior. You must have seen so many cases. So what is your take on it?
Yeah, definitely. In infertility, tuberculosis is a great role, but it's a diagnosed tuberculosis is a very difficult job. And as you said, in hysteroscopy and laparoscopy, it's a great tool. And because TB-PCR, you don't know. If you go for a TB-PCR, it's if you feel the findings if you see the finding of the laparoscopic, there are dense additions. Tubes are, I think so, spillage is hardly partial block, tube block. Then also it comes negative. But in that case, we should start the anti-tubercular drug,
Yes, ma'am.
and
Yes.
that is more important, I would like to say. I will just have Dr. Vadia very long back now. He may be not here. I and Dr. Suvedar, we went to do the workshop at the Bombay, and he was doing a lot of laparoscopic, and he taught us, if you see or if you don't see, you start anti-tubercular drug with prednisolone for 3 months at least. And literally, I and Dr. Subedar, he may not be there, blindly we were started the drug, and we were getting the good results, I can tell you. On that, I think this is
Yeah.
25 years back.
Many
But
seniors.
now we cannot write because all thing has come to be consumers and all the evidence.
I agree with this, madam. I agree. I have also seen so many cases. Mesenteric lymph glands, they are not giving treatment, and patient said, I will follow you. And I gave her anti-tubercular treatment after USG and other investigation. Except these glands, nothing was positive. But I gave her and she responded. But now it is not possible. That is the problem. Now when there is no test is positive, they are not allowed to treat. That is the problem. Your
fact,
lecture was so
if you've heard of-
informative.
If you've heard of Dr. Kamala Selvaraj of Chennai, she has got this Madras regime, jo Saraf ma'am ne bataya na, with prednisolone. She gives prednisolone with anti-tubercular for 6 months for every patient who comes. It is called Madras regime. I was very surprised back in 95, 96 when I saw her papers. I had gone to Coimbatore for training. So that's when I saw her paper. Then they said, no, in Chennai, Dr. Kamala Selvaraj calls it Madras regime. It is called the Madras regime. That is what is written in her case papers, Madras regime. What madam told now, na, prednisolone plus anti-tubercular. I suppose it had a good effect.
We started prednisolone 10 mg, 40 mg per day for 1 week, then 30, then 20, then 10.
Yeah, okay.
Almost 6 weeks to 8 weeks we were giving, and definitely we were getting the result also.
Okay.
At time later,
I have also given. And this cervical, I was also doing HSG, and now I am not doing. But that I found very difficult. Sometimes os is so tightly closed, even we can't put the sound.
We want to dilate and the cervix is not opening. Nowadays, we started to
so many
Cytolec 400, but sometimes it doesn't work even. 400 to keep a cytolog is not a remedy.
Of cervical stenosis.
Maybe before, because of tuberculosis, definitely it may be. And I still remember one case in Railway Hospital. I was doing BNC, only simple tool previously. So for the infertility case, I couldn't do anything. I just gave her anti-tubercular drug and she conceived after a long time. And she got 2 children even. She was very known to me and she delivered by me also. Mr. Vyas karke yahan pe hai. So this is the fact, I think so. On long
even pulmonary tuberculosis, they were not giving. They are saying no test is positive. This is not tuberculosis. But that was not a so strict time. And now it is consumer forum also. So now I am not giving.
Pulmonary tuberculosis is a lot of things to diagnose. Even you can sputum, you can diagnose, X-ray, you can diagnose. So many things. And the history of low-grade fever, so many.
Nothing is there. Nothing is there, then they don't agree to give. So now it has become.
Isonic सबको खिला देते थे बचपन में.
I have that time and done also.
बचपन में आइसोनेक कितने लोगों को लिखी होगी.
Nice talk, madam. Dr. Jayashree, very nice talk.
Yeah. Jayashree, very practical approach.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The presentation was also very nice.
Very nice.
Thank you.
चलो मुलाकात होएगी. हमारे AICOG में 21, I don't know. Indore में.
Jayashree, there is one question in the question box. What is your take on MOTT?
MOT is, yeah. So MOT as in as a cause of infertility?
I don't know. Saroj is
No, MOT is a thing which will confuse, which will come as TB PCR positive, you know.
yeah.
Mycobacteria other than tuberculosis is
Mhm.
MOT.
Yes. Other than my, sometimes they are giving the reports in the PCR.
Yeah.
also,
So
mycobacterium.
PCR positive could be because of MOT. But
Hmm.
yes, we have to treat it. We have to treat whatever is the mycobacteria that does cause endometritis. I showed you a couple of slides of endometritis. Those might be caused by MOT.
Mhm.
Saroj?
Saroj, unmute yourself.
Ma'am says government people refuse treatment on this.
Hello?
Saroj.
Yeah, Saroj, bolo.
You know, when I sent these, I got two patients of MOT, one infertile and another deep pelvic pain. Although the second one was a combination of endometriosis, but she also said it is the TB PCR also, menstrual blood PCR said it is MOT. So the government people, you know, they are quite vague and they say it is not an easy diagnosis and we won't give treatment. I mean, ultimately they did not treat her. And they said, no, madam, this cannot be diagnosed on TB PCR. You inquire from lab whether they have done. I don't remember what kind of. I said, this is not my job to keep coordinating between you people and the lab. So government people, when I don't know about other places. Maybe they are very much right now, busy with this corona thing. But MOT, they are discouraging patients and not giving them treatment. So in that case, what to do?
No, but MOT is not a notifiable thing, na? Tuberculosis is notifiable. MOT
Okay, that angle I never thought of, that we can also then we can write to them and note.
You can write. You can write.
That is a good thing. That way I never thought we can ourselves, although Clinda and Strepto.
Yeah, of course you can. You can give clindamycin.
True.
Mycoplasma, yeah. Because I spoke to Dr. Chajlani, and what I understood what he said was only tuberculosis you need to notify. The others?
Good. Thank you. That angle never came into my mind, that we don't need to notify and we can ourselves also treat. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Jayashree.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the
you.
very nice talk,
Thank you a
ma'am.
lot. Yeah, it was my pleasure. Yeah. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye.
ma'am.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you, Arjun.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.